Hello, dear classmates and Professor Elise. Thank you for this opportunity to present here. I'm glad you're here. Let's start exploring developmental evaluation together. Developmental evaluation supports innovation within an organization and its activities. Innovative initiatives are continuous and they often unfold in an unpredictable environment since the issue framing can change. The challenge for evaluators is that not all problems are bounded, have optimal solutions, or occur within stable parameters. These kinds of problems are complex and difficult to define. This is where innovators often find themselves. Developmental evaluation applies to ongoing innovation process in which both the path and destination are evolving. It is intended to support innovation within the context of uncertainty. Innovation is distinct from improvement in that it causes reorganization at a systems level and can occur at organization, network, or society level. Evaluation is about critical thinking. Development is about creative thinking. Developmental evaluation holds both in balance. DE combines evidence-based and objective evaluation with change-oriented organizational development. Average evaluator works in a team to design and test new approaches, whereas developmental evaluator introduces reality in innovation process, helping to indicate promising and abandoning pointless directions. On the slide, you can see the figure 1, which shows that movement happens methodically from assessing situation to gathering and analyzing data, formulating solution, and then implementing that solution. This logical approach works well when the problem is well understood. In figure 2, you can see rapidly moving back and forth between problem and solution. A solution may appear ideal but does not get at what was intended. So the problem needs to be re-examined in light of what was learned in that experience. In situations with a lot of uncertainty, standardization of inputs, consistency of treatment, outcomes uniformity are not helpful since they work in well-defined situations. Whereas in dynamic and unpredictable atmosphere, we need innovation to break previous boundaries. Developmental evaluation is more suitable in such situations because it supports innovation to enable exploration and development. The Panarchy loop outlines 4 stages of development: exploitation, conservation, release, and reorganization. Reorganization is an exploration phase which is characterized by trial and error. Predictable exploitation begins when ideas crystallize. Exploitation takes invention and turns it into action. Conservation starts when efficiencies that are bound to time or environment are discovered. Release means reassembling and abandoning familiar practices, therefore creating fertile ground for innovation. In Panarchy loop, exploitation is supported by formative evaluation, conservation by summative evaluation, and exploration by developmental evaluation. Myths about developmental evaluation. Number 1. It replaces other evaluations. No. DE is not superior or inferior. Rather, it is an addition to the current set of evaluation approaches. Number 2. Developmental evaluation is about soft methods. DE is rigorous. It questions evaluants seeking deeper understanding about certain impacts. Number 3. DE is about collecting stories. DE may involve qualitative and/or quantitative methods. Number 4. Developmental evaluation is process evaluation. DE ultimately focuses on results, not the process. Number 5. Developmental evaluation downplays accountability. DE accountability rests in its ability to support development. If nothing is developed, it has failed. Number 6. Developmental evaluation is the same as participatory evaluation. No, participatory evaluation is about approach distinction, whereas developmental evaluation is about purpose distinction. When talking about assessing conditions for developmental evaluation, we need to ask certain questions, such as what is the level of internal critical thinking? If organization uses reflective practice and critical thinking, does this inform decision making? Developmental evaluation brings evidence to innovation, reflection, evolution, innovation process. What are the decision-making models, both perceived and real? At this phase of scoping out the developmental evaluation, it is helpful to think about who needs to be at the table at various points. Developmental evaluation can assist by mapping out the organization's decision-making system so that the process can be made more intentional and transparent. Is there buy-in for developmental evaluation? Buy-in is crucial because DE requires that leadership and change agents be accessible to test assumptions, gain perspective, and articulate shifts in thinking. Without commitment, the learning produced in the evaluation will not inform decision-making. Is this innovation local or happening across distance? Shared understanding and momentum more easily emerge from face-to-face and small group meetings, rather than from document exchanges and phone calls. In some instances, being physically present at all places where decisions are made would be impossible. Judgments need to be made about which events are critical for the evaluator and which are not. Next, the question comes, how to apply developmental evaluation? Methods of DE are interviews, focus groups, surveys, email questions and observations, as well as group analysis and interpretation. In DE is that evaluation accompanies the development process so that questioning and learning happen simultaneously with action. As a team member, the developmental evaluator contributes to the core group of innovators, moving through a range of roles such as observer, questioner, and facilitator. DE creates a space to challenge and question in a way that does not stifle creativity, including creating the conditions for attention to the evaluation process. One of the core activities of the developmental evaluator is helping the organization to work with the data. The evaluator may see patterns that prompt a different way of organizing the data, generating new perspectives and insights for the team. Shared interpretation of evaluative findings is important. It leads to joint ownership of the results and a more informed understanding of what is happening. Developmental evaluators are attuned to two streams of data. First, there is information that assists in validating certain decisions, approaches, or assumptions. The second stream of data for DE documents the innovation process. Next, we need to consider strategy and indicators. So, here's where we are now. Where do we expect to be in a year or 2 years? If we had the same session in a year or two, what would we hope to see then? Process. Indicators arise from deliberately observing certain things, group discussions about project purpose, for example, and making connections between these other things happening around the process. The organization becomes clear about its goals, the process by which they are reached, and the structures needed to support them, while allowing for the dynamism and flexibility of a developmental process. When expectations begin to appear, implied criteria may shape judgments about what is emerging. The role of the DE is to point this out to the group and confirm whether the group is ready to render judgment or open to further experimentation. So, who is the developmental evaluator? There are different ways to fill the role: as an external consultant, a trusted peer, or an internal team member assigned to the role. It is also important to consider the degree to which evaluator understands the domain in which the organization works, his or her familiarity with the organization's culture, and if internal, whether he or she also has functional or decision-making responsibilities in implementing a project. Then there comes credibility. Developmental evaluators need to work closely with key people who are involved with the innovative initiative. Having their trust is essential. At the same time, The developmental evaluator's proximity to action may reduce credibility in the eyes of some funders or other stakeholders. Knowledge of the subject matter is an advantage in the developmental evaluation process. It can also enhance credibility with internal and external stakeholders. Having a current understanding of the field enables a deeper level of inquiry and can assist the evaluator in framing the discussion more appropriately. Internal versus external. The advantage to fulfilling the developmental evaluator role with someone external, such as a consultant, is that this person may bring fresh and candid perspectives. Some organizations have successfully experimented with having an internal developmental evaluator. A full-time staff person who plays the DE role may have better access and therefore be more likely to capture important lessons as they emerge. Multiple skills are needed to be effective as a developmental evaluator. Developmental evaluators are often generalists, able to access what is needed and draw upon an array of skills and competencies. Particularly useful are skills in synthesis, listening, and asking difficult questions in a non-judgmental way. The developmental evaluator is a critical friend who can challenge assumptions while drawing upon best practices and research, as well as understanding the implications of intervention from a social and political perspective. While it's important that any evaluator have good methodological skills, it is key for a developmental evaluator to have strong conceptual and pattern recognition abilities, as well as skills in both process facilitation and communication. Developmental evaluator must be able to give positive and negative feedback, empirical feedback based on data, observations, experience, and judgment, listening and communicating skills, tolerance for ambiguity. DE helps people deal with uncertainty and take action without prematurely clarifying or reducing it. What are the development evaluation tools? One of the basic frameworks for evaluation aimed at simplifying what we do is summarized by asking 3 questions: what, so what, now what? These simple questions help us to analyze multiple factors and to align diverse questions and actions towards common interests. Mapping a network is a process of identifying connections between people and graphically displaying those connections. Logic models are a vital tool for formative and summative evaluations. They provide a framework that links the activities and strategies of a project within its goals and objectives. In a complex environment, we ask questions about different change conditions. What will happen if we change this or that? Simulations are a more formal way of exploring these paths. Simulation helps people to set out expectations of what might unfold. Appreciative inquiry is an organizational development technique that involves the art and practice of asking questions in ways that strengthen a system's capacity to apprehend, anticipate, and heighten its potential. Appreciative inquiry is a systematic search for what gives life to a system, such as an organization, when it is most effective and constructive. On this picture, you can see appreciative inquiry model, figure 5. It includes appreciating, envisioning impact, co-constructing, and sustaining. The underlying premise of appreciative inquiry is that asking the question is not a query, it is also an intervention. Appreciative inquiry focuses on positive attributes, what works rather than what doesn't. Case examples are collected and then examined to uncover key themes and patterns about what succeeds. Appreciative inquiry tends to support trust building in organizations because it acknowledges individual contribution and supports the overall effectiveness of the change effort. Last but not the least, Issues and challenges. Visually representing models can help evaluators transmit information with economy and substance. Diagrams also convey a system's perspective that can support decision-making in complex situations. Power is implicit in many of the dynamics with the development process. Whether perceived or real, power shapes interactions within collaborations between funders and grantees, among stakeholders, and within organizations. Developmental evaluators have a much closer relationship to what is being evaluated than traditional evaluators. For this reason, there is some questioning about the legitimacy of developmental evaluation. The important thing to remember is that DE is a stage-specific approach. It is meant to apply data-based inputs in the exploration and evolution of innovation in a dynamic environment. The massive amount of information generated in a developmental process can be overwhelming. Providing synthesis in a timely and digestible way can be a great benefit to social innovations. DE can be a long-term process and may not have the same concrete start and end points as a more traditional evaluation. Developmental evaluation must focus on the relationship between processes and outcomes, understanding the connections in deeper ways. Thanks for your attention. Have a great day.